A cafe worker helped a quiet temp with his first day, only to see him announced as the new CEO. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. It was a chilly Tuesday morning when Emma walked into the small cafe, tying her apron as she quickly scanned the tables for the new temp who was supposed to join for the day. Her manager had mentioned someone was coming in to help, but she had no idea who they were or what to expect. Emma had worked at this cafe for almost a year, and while she liked it, she could never ignore the feeling that it was just a pit stop on her journey to something bigger. She had dreams, aspirations to do more than serve coffee to busy office workers. This cafe was just a way to pay the bills, but one day, she hoped to open her own business or find a job that really inspired her. As she tied her apron, Emma spotted him. A tall, quiet man sat at one of the back tables, his head slightly bent over a laptop. He looked like any other temp, discreet, reserved, and in his mid-30s. His unassuming appearance blended perfectly with the low-key atmosphere of the cafe. Emma approached him, offering a friendly smile. "Hey there, you must be the new guy." "I'm Emma," she said, reaching out her hand. The man looked up, surprised. He was tall, with dark brown hair that looked like it hadn't been styled in days, and his blue eyes seemed a little tired but kind. He stood up and shook her hand. "Hi, I'm Jack," he replied in a soft voice. She could tell he wasn't exactly sure what to expect either. "I'll show you the ropes today. Don't worry, it's not too bad," Emma reassured him. She could tell Jack was a bit out of his element, but grateful for the help. The cafe was busy that morning, with the usual crowd, business people grabbing quick lattes before heading to their meetings, students studying over cups of tea. Jack seemed to get the hang of things quickly, quietly filling orders and keeping up with the rush. Emma was impressed. He wasn't the most outgoing person, but he certainly worked efficiently. It wasn't long before the cafe had settled into a rhythm. Emma watched him, still intrigued by the quiet man who had no real flair for conversation, but an undeniable calmness that made the work easier. "So, what do you do outside of temp work?" she asked as they wiped down the counter during a slow moment. Jack hesitated for a second before answering. "I work in tech. Been in the field for years, but I'm taking a break to clear my head," he said. Emma raised an eyebrow. "Tech? Wow, that's a huge field. What kind of work do you do?" Jack shrugged and smiled faintly. "Just coding, building things. Nothing too exciting." Emma smiled, impressed but not expecting much more. It wasn't the usual conversation you had in a cafe. As they continued to talk about life outside work, Emma couldn't help but feel a strange connection to him, as if his quiet demeanor was hiding something more. Little did she know, that was exactly the point. Jack wasn't just any temp. He was the man who would change her life. Later that day, after their shift ended, Emma went home, tired but content. The day had been busier than she'd expected, but Jack had handled it like a pro. She figured she'd see him around a few more times, maybe get to know him better. But what she didn't know was that the man she had helped train today would soon be revealed as the new CEO of the company she admired. What was once just a typical day in the cafe would soon be remembered as the day her entire world changed. After a long day of work, Emma couldn't shake the image of Jack, the quiet temp she had helped train. She couldn't stop thinking about their brief conversations and how easy it was to talk to him. Something about him felt different from the usual people she met. He was reserved, yet there was an undeniable charm to his calm demeanor. As she sat on her couch that night, her phone buzzed. She checked it and saw an email from her manager. The subject: read, special event tomorrow, CEO announcement. It was unusual for them to make such a big deal over a simple meeting, but she shrugged it off, assuming it was just another corporate announcement. Little did she know, this email would lead to a series of events that would change her life forever. The next day, Emma arrived early to the cafe. As she walked through the door, she was greeted by the usual sights: busy baristas, the sound of coffee grinding, and the smell of fresh pastries. She noticed Jack sitting at his usual spot, looking over some papers. He was always so focused, so different from the rest of the temp workers she had encountered. He didn't seem interested in making small talk. but there was something about him that made her curious. Maybe it was the way he carried himself, the way he didn't seem to care about impressing anyone. As the morning went on, the cafe became busier. Emma took orders, served coffee, and tried to stay on top of everything. Around noon, the door to the cafe opened, and a group of well-dressed executives walked in, talking loudly about the upcoming corporate event. Emma tried not to eavesdrop, but she couldn't help overhearing bits of their conversation. "It's about time we announced the new CEO," one of the executives said. "I just hope he can handle everything." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea who they were talking about, but the mention of the CEO caught her attention. The more she thought about it, the more it puzzled her. She had only heard whispers around the cafe about an upcoming big announcement, but she hadn't expected it to happen so soon. Later that afternoon, the cafe slowed down as the lunch rush died down. Jack was still sitting at his table, working intently on his laptop. Emma couldn't resist. She walked over to him, trying to make the conversation feel casual. "So, are you excited for the big announcement today?" she asked, trying to make small talk. Jack looked up from his laptop and gave her a faint smile. "Not really. It's not my thing," he said, shrugging. Emma laughed lightly. "Yeah, I guess I get it. It can be a bit much sometimes. But it's kind of exciting, don't you think?" Jack simply nodded, his eyes returning to the screen. There was a quiet tension between them, but she didn't mind it. Emma liked the calmness he brought. Later that afternoon, the cafe emptied out, and Emma started cleaning up. Just as she was wiping down the counter, her phone buzzed. It was another email from her manager. This time, the subject was CEO announcement, big reveal. Her curiosity piqued. She opened it. "Please join us at the company headquarters this evening for a special announcement. The new CEO will be revealed at the event. Dress code, formal." Emma felt a sudden flutter of excitement in her chest. The CEO reveal. She hadn't expected this, but she decided to go, hoping to learn more about the company's future and who this mysterious new CEO might be. She had no idea that tonight, her life would take a turn. When she arrived at the event, the atmosphere was electric. Executives and employees were gathered in the sleek, modern conference room. The lights were dimmed, and everyone seemed to be talking in hushed tones, waiting for the big moment. Emma felt slightly out of place in her simple dress, but she pushed the feeling aside and took a seat. The room went silent as the lights dimmed further. A microphone crackled to life, and a voice echoed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Tonight is a momentous occasion. We are proud to announce our new CEO, someone who will lead this company into its next phase of success. Please welcome Jack." Emma froze. Her heart stopped as she looked around in disbelief. She couldn't be hearing this correctly. The quiet man she had trained, the temp who had been sitting next to her at the cafe, was the new CEO? The man she had been helping just a few days ago was now in charge of the entire company? She couldn't believe it. She stood frozen in her seat as Jack walked up to the stage. He was no longer the quiet man she had known. His posture was confident, and his presence commanded attention. As he took the microphone and began speaking, Emma's mind raced. How had she missed the signs? How had she failed to recognize him for who he really was? Jack was the new CEO of the company, and she had no idea what to do next. I felt a wave of disbelief wash over me. As I sat frozen in my seat, staring at Jack, the man I had worked with just days ago, standing at the front of the room. His transformation from the quiet temp into the confident, commanding CEO was nothing short of startling. My mind raced to make sense of what was happening. How could this man, this quiet stranger who had barely said more than a few words to me, be the leader of the company? And why hadn't he told me? The realization hit hard. I had been helping him, training him like any other temp, thinking he was just another employee. And now, here he was, announcing his leadership, the new face of the company I had admired from the outside. I could barely keep my hands from shaking as I sat there in stunned silence. I had no idea how to process what I had just witnessed. "Jack, the CEO." He smiled as he addressed the crowd, his words flowing confidently, but I couldn't focus on what he was saying. My thoughts were too chaotic. Did he know how I felt? Did he understand that I had helped him, thinking he was just another temp trying to make a living like the rest of us? Was this some kind of test, a game, or just sheer coincidence? The night felt surreal as I tried to stay in the moment, to appear calm and collected, but my insides were anything but. After the event, I found myself unable to leave right away. I lingered by the bar, sipping water, trying to ground myself, but the shock of everything still clung to me. It was only when I heard his voice that I snapped out of my trance. "Emma, can we talk?" Jack's voice was familiar, but there was a weight to it now, a sense of authority I hadn't heard before. I turned to face him, my heart pounding. "Jack," I said, forcing myself to sound composed, though my mind was still reeling. "I didn't know. I had no idea you were." I trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence. "I know," he said, his expression softening slightly. "I should have told you, but I wanted to see how you treated me, not because of who I am, but just as a person. I didn't want special treatment." I nodded slowly, my thoughts swirling. He didn't want special treatment, but it still hurt. I had worked with him, helped him, all while believing he was just another temp. He had been so different, so quiet, so humble. I had started to admire him for his focus and work ethic. But now it felt like all of that had been a lie. "I never meant to deceive you," he continued, stepping closer. "I'm sorry if I hurt you. It wasn't intentional." I looked at him, trying to process the apology. "It's not that you deceived me," I said, shaking my head. "It's just, everything feels different now. I was helping you, not knowing who you really were. And now, I'm trying to figure out what this means." Jack looked at me for a long moment, as if considering his next words carefully. "I understand. It wasn't right. But I want to make it up to you. I'd like to offer you a position here, something more than just working in the cafe. Something that fits your talents." His words caught me off guard. "A position? Here? In the company?" I wasn't sure if I was ready for such a drastic change. "I don't know," I said, unsure how to respond. "I'm not sure I'm qualified." He smiled gently. "Emma, I've seen how you work. You have skills beyond what you give yourself credit for. I know you've been dreaming of something bigger. This could be your chance." His words hung in the air between us, and for a moment, I wondered if this was the opportunity one had been waiting for. Could I really work for the company that now had Jack as the CEO? Was this the chance to finally get out of the cafe and into the world I had always wanted to be part of? But then another thought crept in. What about us? Was I just another project for him, a person he could fix or give a hand to because of his position? Could I trust him after everything that had happened? The room around me felt too quiet, as if it was waiting for me to make a decision. I wanted to say yes, but part of me still felt unsure. "I don't know what to think, Jack," I finally said. "This is all moving so fast." He nodded, understanding. "I know it's a lot to process. Take your time. Just know that the offer is on the table, and whenever you're ready, I'll be here." As he walked away, I was left standing there, 1,000 thoughts swirling in my head. Could I really trust him again? Would I take this opportunity? Or would it change everything between us? One thing was certain. Everything had changed in that moment, and I had no idea where it would lead. I spent the next few days replaying the conversation with Jack in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. The offer was tempting, but at the same time, it made me uneasy. Could I trust him? Could I really trust myself to step into this new world he was offering? It felt like a dream, one that I had wanted for so long, but never really believed could be mine. On one hand, this was my chance to escape the cafe, to finally be part of something bigger. But on the other hand, there was something unsettling about it. Was I just another person he was offering help to because of his position? Or was this truly about me and the potential he saw in me? I couldn't shake the doubt that lingered in the back of my mind. I had spent so long believing that my life would always be this way. Working in the cafe, barely scraping by, watching others live their dreams from the sidelines. And now, Jack was offering me a shot at something more. But what if it wasn't real? What if I was just a charity case to him, a project to make himself feel good about helping? I had worked with him, but I hadn't really known him. He had been a stranger in so many ways, even if he had shared some of his life with me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I needed answers. I couldn't just jump into this without knowing where it would lead. I had to confront him, ask the questions I was too scared to ask. I couldn't risk getting caught up in something that would leave me even more confused and hurt. So, I reached out to Jack. I texted him, asking if we could meet up to talk. He replied almost immediately, agreeing to meet at the same cafe where we had first met. I walked there that evening, my heart racing with every step. The cafe was quieter than usual, the soft hum of the evening settling in. I sat at the same table where Jack and I had spent that first day together, trying to gather my thoughts. When Jack arrived, He looked just like the man I had seen on stage at the announcement, confident, poised, but there was something in his eyes that made him seem just as vulnerable as I felt. He sat down across from me, his usual calm demeanor not hiding the slight tension in his posture. "You wanted to talk?" he asked, his voice gentle but steady. I took a deep breath, looking into his eyes. "I just need to understand something," I began. "Why didn't you tell me who you were? Why did you let me train you? Thinking you were just another temp." Jack paused for a moment, as if weighing his words carefully. "I didn't want to be treated differently," he said quietly. "I didn't want you to see me as the CEO, as someone important. I wanted to be just Jack, the person who could learn and grow like anyone else." His words hit me harder than I expected. It made sense in a way. He hadn't wanted special treatment, but it also made me feel foolish. "But why me?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "Why did you pick me to train you?" Jack's eyes softened, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw a hint of something deeper. "Because you have something special," he said. "I saw it the first day we worked together. You're driven, capable, and you care. It wasn't just your work ethic, it was how you treated everyone, how you genuinely wanted to help. That's rare." I wasn't sure how to respond. His words were kind, but they also made me feel exposed, like I had been seen in a way I wasn't ready for. "I didn't want to use my position to get ahead," Jack continued. "I wanted to see how you worked without knowing who I was. And I wanted to make sure you were the right person for this opportunity." I nodded slowly, still processing what he had said. I had been caught up in my own fears, my own insecurities. But Jack wasn't just offering me a job. He was offering me a chance to prove myself, to take a step into a world I had only dreamed of. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I wanted this. Not just for the job, but for the chance to break free from the life I had been living. "So what now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Do I just take the job and leave everything behind?" Jack's gaze was steady, his expression serious. "It's not just about the job, Emma," he said. "It's about finding something more. You've got the skills, the drive. What I'm offering is just the beginning. But it's up to you to decide if you're ready to take that step." I sat there for a moment, letting his words sink in. I had spent so long feeling stuck, feeling like I didn't belong in this world. But now, Jack was giving me a chance to prove that I could. I could take the step. I could be more than just a cafe worker. I could be someone who truly made a difference. "I'm ready," I said finally, looking up at him. "I'm ready to take that step." Jack smiled, and for the first time since I had met him, I saw something new in his eyes. Pride, maybe, or just the faintest trace of hope. "Then let's get started." As we stood up and walked out of the cafe together, I realized that my life had just changed. I was stepping into a new world, a world that I had always dreamed of, and it was all because of one simple act of kindness. And somehow, I knew that this was only the beginning. I woke up the next morning with a sense of nervous excitement swirling inside me. I had made the decision to step into this new world, and now there was no turning back. The job offer from Jack was real. He had given me an opportunity to work at the company, something I had dreamed about for so long. But now the reality of it all was setting in. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew that it would be a challenge. Jack's words from our conversation the other night echoed in my mind. Asterisk, "You've got the skills, the drive. What I'm offering is just the beginning. But it's up to you to decide if you're ready to take that step." Asterisk, I had said yes. But now, I had to prove it to myself. I wasn't just stepping into a new job. I was stepping into a new life, a life I had never imagined I could have. I had always been the cafe worker, the one who served coffee with a smile, but never felt like I belonged in the world of business. Now, I was walking into that world. My first day at the company was nothing like I expected. The office was sleek, modern, and full of people who seemed to know exactly what they were doing. I had spent most of my time working in the cafe, and the corporate world felt like a completely different universe. Jack was there to greet me, of course, and he made it clear that he wanted to help me succeed. But as he led me through the halls of the office, I felt the weight of self-doubt creeping in. Was I really ready for this? The hours passed, and I quickly realized that this wasn't just about fitting in. It was about proving that I had the ability to succeed in a world I knew so little about. I worked hard, asking questions, taking notes, and trying my best to keep up. I was determined not to fail, but the pressure felt heavy. Every time I glanced at Jack, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me, waiting to see if I could live up to the potential he saw in me. And then, it happened. During a meeting, I was asked to present an idea I had worked on. My heart raced as I stood in front of the room, all eyes on me. For a moment, I thought I might freeze, but then I remembered what Jack had said. You have skills beyond what you give yourself credit for. I took a deep breath and began speaking. The words flowed easier than I expected. I could see people nodding, listening, and taking notes. When I finished, there was a moment of silence, and then the team applauded. I felt a rush of pride. I can do this. After the meeting, Jack pulled me aside. You did great, he said with a smile. You've got a real talent for this. His words meant more to me than he could ever know. The weight of self-doubt I had been carrying seemed to lift, and for the first time, I felt like I truly belonged. That evening, I sat in my small apartment, reflecting on the day. I thought about how far I had come, how much had changed in such a short time. I had gone from being a cafe worker to presenting ideas in a corporate meeting. And all of this was happening because of Jack's belief in me. But still, there was that lingering question. What about us? I hadn't forgotten how everything had started, with him pretending to be just another temp. It still stung a little. But as I thought about it, I realized that Jack hadn't just offered me a job. He had given me a chance to prove myself, to show that I had the ability to succeed. And now, it was up to me to take that chance and run with it. As I settled into my new role at the company, I found myself growing more confident each day. The work was challenging, but it was also rewarding. I was learning, growing, and beginning to carve out my own place in this new world. And with every passing day, I felt more like the person I had always wanted to be. I wasn't just Emma, the cafe worker anymore. I was Emma, the woman who had worked hard to get where she was. I still didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, I felt excited to find out. The job, the company, and Jack had opened up a new world for me, and I wasn't going to waste the chance. I had no idea where this journey would take me, but I knew one thing for sure. I was ready for whatever came next. I had been working at the company for a few weeks now, and things were finally starting to settle into a routine. I felt more confident in my role, and the sense of belonging that I had longed for was slowly becoming a reality. Jack, as the new CEO, was around more often than not, and each time I saw him, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of admiration and lingering questions. I had come so far from the cafe, and yet, something about the way our paths had crossed still made me feel uneasy. I tried to focus on my work, putting all my energy into the projects I was given, determined to prove that I was more than just a temporary employee. But despite my efforts to stay professional, I couldn't help but wonder what Jack really thought of me. Was he just being kind? Was there more to his interest in me than I realized? As the days passed, I began to notice how different he was with me compared to the rest of the staff. There was a familiarity, a certain ease between us that I couldn't explain. He wasn't like that with anyone else. Jack would check in on me more than he did with other employees, and there were moments when our conversations felt more personal than professional. I wasn't sure how to interpret this. I had already been hurt once by the way he had hidden his identity from me, and I couldn't let myself get caught up in something that wasn't what I thought it was. But still, the connection between us felt undeniable. One afternoon, we found ourselves alone in the office. The rest of the team had already left for the day. Jack had been reviewing a few reports, but as soon as I walked in, he set them aside and smiled at me. "How's everything going?" he asked, his voice warm but soft. I nodded, trying to appear calm. "It's going well. I'm learning a lot, and I feel like I'm finally finding my place here." He leaned back in his chair, his eyes meeting mine. "I'm glad to hear that. You've been doing great work, Emma." His praise felt genuine, but it also made me uncomfortable. Was he just being a good boss, or was there something more behind it? The silence between us grew heavy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was waiting for something, maybe even for me to say something. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could, he spoke again. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said that night, about how everything felt so fast. I know I put a lot on your plate, but I want you to know I'm here to support you, no matter what." I looked at him, his expression serious. "I appreciate that, Jack," I said, my voice steady despite the tension in the air. "But I need to ask you something." He raised an eyebrow, clearly curious. "What's that?" "I just need to know, are you treating me differently because I work here now, or because of something else?" The question hung in the air, and I immediately regretted asking it. I had no idea how he would respond, but I couldn't keep wondering about it. I needed clarity. Jack looked at me for a long moment, and for a second, I thought he might avoid answering. But then he sighed and leaned forward. I've always believed in giving people the chance to prove themselves, he said quietly. You're more than just a good employee to me, Emma. You're someone I respect. I didn't want you to feel like I was giving you special treatment, but I've always admired how hard you've worked. His words made my heart race. I had been afraid of what he might say, but now I was more confused than ever. Was this just professional admiration, or was there something more? I understand, I said, nodding slowly. I just didn't want to misunderstand your intentions. Jack smiled gently, as if trying to reassure me. You're not misunderstanding anything. I just wanted to be honest with you. I took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift from my chest. For the first time, I felt like I had the truth, or at least part of it. But as the conversation came to a close, I realized there was still so much I didn't know. Could I really trust Jack? Could I trust myself in this new world I had stepped into? The next few days were filled with a mix of anticipation and unease. I continued to work hard, but I couldn't help but notice the tension between Jack and me. We were walking a fine line between professional respect and something more personal. It was hard to ignore, especially when our paths crossed so often. But as I continued to grow into my role, I realized that no matter what happened with Jack, this was my moment. I had worked hard to get here, and I wasn't about to let anything distract me from that. The truth was, I didn't know where this was going. I didn't know what Jack really wanted, and I didn't know what I wanted either. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let my future be defined by uncertainty. Whatever came next, I was ready to face it head on. I spent the next few days caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The conversation with Jack had left me with more questions than answers. He had been honest with me, but there was still a part of me that felt unsure. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the edge of something big, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. The days at the office were becoming more intense. As the new CEO, Jack had been pushing the company in new directions, and it was clear that he had a vision for the future. People were starting to take notice, and the atmosphere at work was charged with energy. But even with all the excitement around us, I couldn't help but feel a distance growing between Jack and me. It wasn't that he was distant in the traditional sense. In fact, he was more present than ever before. But now, there was a wall between us, one that I couldn't quite explain. Perhaps it was the weight of his position, or perhaps it was the unspoken tension between us. Either way, I couldn't ignore it. On one of those days, after a particularly exhausting meeting, I found myself standing by the windows in the office, looking out at the city. The view was stunning, but I felt no peace in it. The city seemed so far away, and yet I felt so close to it, like I was just one step away from the life I had always wanted. I heard Jack approach from behind, and his voice broke my thoughts. "You okay?" he asked, his tone soft but filled with concern. I turned to face him, meeting his eyes. "I'm fine," I said, trying to sound casual, though I knew it wasn't true. "Just thinking." He stepped closer, his gaze never leaving mine. "About what?" I paused, unsure how to put it into words. "About everything," I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. "About how things are changing so fast. About us. About—" "I don't know, Jack." There was a moment of silence between us. He seemed to understand, but there was a hesitance in his eyes. "I know it's a lot," he said softly, "but I need you to know that this isn't just about the job. This isn't just about work, Emma. You're important to me." His words hit me like a wave, and for a moment, I felt everything I had been holding back come to the surface. But just as quickly, I pushed it down again. I couldn't let myself get caught up in feelings that might lead nowhere. "I appreciate that," I said, my voice steady. "But I still don't know what all of this means. What do you want from me, Jack?" He looked at me, his expression searching, like he was trying to find the right words. "I want you to be part of this," he said finally. "Not just as an employee, but as someone I believe in. I want you to take that step. Not just for the job, but for you." I shook my head slightly, confusion flooding my mind. "But I don't know if I'm ready for all of this. I don't know what to expect, and I don't want to end up disappointed." Jack reached out, placing a hand gently on my shoulder. "I'm not asking you to be ready, Emma. I'm asking you to trust me. Trust that I'm here, and that you're not alone in this." His words stirred something inside me, a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. But at the same time, there was still a part of me that wanted to pull away, to protect myself from what felt like a growing storm. I just don't want things to change between us, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to lose what we have. Jack smiled softly, the kind of smile that made my heart flutter. You won't lose me, Emma, he said quietly. But you have to decide what you want. I can't make that decision for you. I looked into his eyes, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of clarity. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing. I couldn't keep running from what was happening between us. I'll think about it, I said, my voice steady. But I need time. He nodded, his gaze softening. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. As he walked away, I stood there, staring out the window, trying to process everything. It wasn't easy to admit, but the truth was, I was falling for Jack. And the more I tried to deny it, the more it became clear that he was a part of my life in a way I couldn't ignore. But I wasn't sure if I was ready to take that step yet. The future was uncertain, and so was I. But I knew one thing. I was finally ready to face whatever came next. I spent the next few days wrestling with my thoughts. Jack's words lingered in my mind like a melody I couldn't shake. Asterisk, trust me. I'm here. Asterisk, the weight of his offer, his feelings, was almost too much to carry. I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't ignore the fear that still gripped me. What if it wasn't real? What if everything was just some beautiful illusion? I didn't want to lose myself in this, but I also didn't want to walk away from what could be the opportunity of a lifetime. I needed to make a choice, and I needed to make it fast. One evening, as I sat alone at my apartment, staring out the window at the city lights, I realized that I couldn't keep running. I had been afraid of taking the next step, afraid of what it would mean for me and for Jack. But I knew I couldn't let fear dictate my future anymore. The next morning, I walked into the office with a new sense of determination. I was going to face whatever was coming head-on. Jack was already there when I arrived, his usual calm demeanor masking the tension I could feel in the air between us. I didn't want to waste any more time. Jack, I said, walking up to his desk. He looked up, surprised, but there was a warmth in his eyes. What's on your mind? I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. I've been thinking about everything, about us, about the company, and I've made my decision. His expression softened, as if he already knew what I was going to say. I'm ready, I said, my voice steady. I want to take the next step. I want to be a part of this, not just as an employee, but as someone who's fully committed to the work, to the future of this company. Jack's eyes brightened, and for a moment, I saw something in him that I hadn't seen before, pride. You're sure? He asked, his voice quiet, almost hesitant. Yes, I replied without hesitation. I'm sure. A smile tugged at the corners of his lips. I'm glad to hear that, he said. You've got what it takes, Emma. I've seen it from the moment we first worked together. The words he spoke felt like a confirmation of everything I had been working for. I had always doubted myself, always felt like I wasn't enough, but now I felt ready to embrace the life that was waiting for me. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew I could do it. I was no longer the cafe worker, the one who barely made it through each day. I was someone who had a future, someone who had a place in this world. The days that followed were a blur of new challenges and opportunities. Jack kept his word and made sure I was involved in the projects that mattered. He didn't treat me differently from anyone else. But there was something about the way he looked at me now, a quiet respect that made me feel like I truly belonged. As I navigated the complexities of the company, I realized how much I had learned in such a short amount of time. I had grown, not just in my role, but as a person. And with every passing day, I felt more confident in myself. One afternoon, Jack asked me to join him in a meeting with the board of directors. It was a big moment for me, one that I hadn't expected so soon. As we sat around the table, the executives discussed new strategies for the company, and I found myself contributing ideas that were met with approval. For the first time, I felt like my voice mattered. After the meeting, Jack pulled me aside. You did great in there, he said, his smile genuine. I knew you had it in you. I couldn't help but smile back. Thanks, Jack. I replied, my heart swelling with pride. But deep down, I knew that this was just the beginning. There was still so much I had to learn, so much I had to prove. And yet, I felt a sense of excitement and purpose that I had never felt before. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was walking it with confidence. As the weeks went on, Jack and I continued to work closely together, and the connection between us grew stronger. We shared late nights at the office, discussing ideas, strategies, and sometimes, just life in general. It wasn't just about work anymore. It was about something deeper, something more personal. But despite everything, I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. I had committed myself to this new life, but I hadn't fully committed to him. And that was the last piece I needed to figure out. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Jack and I found ourselves walking together to the elevator. The air outside was cool, the streets quiet. I turned to him, my heart pounding. "Jack, there's something I need to say." He stopped and looked at me, his gaze gentle, waiting. "I've been scared," I admitted. "Scared of what this all means, scared of losing myself in all of this." Jack stepped closer, his hand reaching out to gently touch mine. "I understand," he said softly. "But you're not alone in this, Emma. And you won't ever have to be." In that moment, everything seemed to fall into place. The uncertainty, the fear, it all melted away. I didn't have to face this world alone. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to face Jack's world with doubt anymore either. It was a quiet evening when everything seemed to fall into place. I stood next to Jack in the same hallway where we had shared so many silent moments. But this time, it was different. There was a clarity in the air, a sense of understanding that neither of us had felt before. I had come so far from that cafe, so far from the uncertain woman who had walked in, unsure of her worth. Now, I stood here, with the man I had grown to care for, ready to take the final step into the life I had always dreamed of. But more than just a career, more than just a job, it was a future. Our future. I looked at Jack, my heart racing with the realization that what we had was more than just professional respect. There was something deeper, something real, something that had grown over time, through moments of vulnerability, uncertainty, and trust. He was more than just my CEO. He was the man I had come to rely on, the one I had learned to trust, not only as a leader, but as someone who truly cared. Jack smiled at me, a soft, genuine smile, the kind that made everything feel right. "You've come a long way, Emma," he said, his voice steady. "But I think we both know this is just the beginning." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle in. It wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about what we had built together. And in that moment, I realized I was ready to face whatever came next, not just for myself, but with him. As the days turned into weeks, I became more entrenched in my role at the company. Jack continued to lead with the same quiet strength he had always shown, but there was a new dynamic between us. We were no longer just colleagues. The connection between us had grown, and now, it felt natural, like it had always been meant to be this way. But even as we worked together more closely, I still felt a slight unease. It wasn't that I doubted him, far from it. I trusted Jack more than I had trusted anyone in a long time. But I still wondered if I had truly stepped into this world on my own terms, or if I was still trying to prove something to myself. It was a thought that lingered, one I couldn't quite shake. One evening, as we worked late into the night, Jack came into my office to check on me. He stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the soft light of the hallway. "You're still here?" he asked, his tone amused yet concerned. I smiled and nodded. "Yeah, just tying up some loose ends." He walked in, his presence both comforting and electrifying. "I'm glad to see you so focused," he said, sitting down across from me. "But remember, it's important to take a break. You've earned it." I chuckled softly. "I'll take a break when the work is done." Jack's gaze softened, and for a moment, the world outside seemed to fade away. "I know that feeling," he said quietly. "But remember, Emma, you don't have to do it all alone." His words struck a chord deep within me. It was easy to get caught up in the drive, to push myself to prove that I could handle everything on my own. But Jack was right. I didn't have to do it alone. I had people in my life now, people who cared, people who supported me. And that included Jack. As the night wore on, Jack and I found ourselves talking more than working. We discussed everything: work, life, our goals, and our fears. It was a side of him I hadn't seen before, a side that was raw and honest. And for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to be just as honest. I told him about my doubts, about my fears of not being enough, of always feeling like I was on the edge of something, but never quite able to grasp it. Jack listened patiently, his eyes never leaving mine. When I finished, he didn't offer a quick solution or try to fix things. Instead, he said the one thing I needed to hear. "You are enough, Emma. You've always been enough." It was in that moment that I realized just how far I had come. The doubts that had once defined me, the fear that had held me back, were slowly being replaced by something stronger. Confidence, trust, and love. I didn't know where the future would take us, but for the first time, I felt ready to embrace it. No longer just as an employee, not just as a woman striving for something more, but as someone who had found a place where she truly belonged. And maybe, just maybe, I had found the person to share that journey with. The months that followed were filled with growth, both professionally and personally. Jack and I worked side by side, facing challenges and celebrating successes, and through it all, the bond between us deepened. We weren't just building a company, we were building a future. And in that future, I saw a partnership, one that wasn't just based on ambition, but on trust, respect, and love. One evening, as we stood in the office, looking out at the city below, Jack turned to me with a smile that reached his eyes. "I never imagined this," he said softly, "that we'd come this far." I smiled back, my heart full. I didn't either, but I'm glad we did. And in that moment, I knew that everything I had worked for, everything I had hoped for, was finally coming together. Not just the career, not just the success, but the love that had grown between us, quietly, steadily, and perfectly in its own time.